All right, Leviticus 12, let's call this one two birds. Why? Because two birds are an option for the sacrifices available for purification in this chapter, which is talking about purification after childbirth. Understanding we are still in that section of passages. We're dividing them up in chapters 11 through roughly 18 to talk about clean versus unclean things and manners of providing either sacrifices or waiting periods of atonement. And this chapter involves both. So let's just get right into it. Beginning at verse 1, the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the people of Israel, saying, if a woman conceives and bears a male child, then she shall be unclean 7 days, as at the time of her menstruation. She shall be unclean. And on the 8th day, the flesh of his foreskin shall be circumcised." Let's skip down to verse 6, where it reads, "And when the days of her purifying are completed, whether for a son or for a daughter, she shall bring to the priest at the entrance of the tent of meeting a lamb 1 year old for a burnt offering, and a pigeon or a turtle dove for a sin offering, and he shall offer it before the Lord and make atonement for her. Then she shall become clean from the flow of her blood. This is the law for her who bears a child, either male or female. And if she cannot afford a lamb, then she shall take 2 turtle doves or 2 pigeons, one for a burnt offering and the other for a sin offering. And the priest shall make atonement for her, and she shall be clean." Thus, the 2 birds. But why did I pick the 2 birds as opposed to the lamb and the bird? Well, if we turn forward to Luke chapter 2, I think it may become more clear, because that is a passage that's going to be talking about Jesus' birth. And in particular, verse 21 of Luke chapter 2 is going to say, "And at the end of 8 days, when he was circumcised, he was called Jesus, the name given by the angel before he was conceived in the womb. And when the time came for their purification according to the law of Moses, they brought him up to Jerusalem to present him to the Lord, as it is written in the law of the Lord. Every male who first opens the womb shall be called holy to the Lord, and to offer the sacrifice according to what is said in the law of the Lord, a pair of turtle doves or 2 young pigeons." Pause, please. There were 2 alternatives given. And the offering that they made for Mary's cleansing after the birth of Jesus was the one offered for one who couldn't so much as afford a single lamb to offer up as the purification after childbirth. So understand this. It takes a little bit of reading into the circumstance, but it sounds like Jesus was born into a situation where his family didn't necessarily have a whole lot. Understanding this, if you've heard me preach this passage before, you've heard me talk about compound that with the fact that not long after he was born, they had what they called the flight to Egypt, because he was hunted down as being a child of promise or prophecy. And so they meaning the rulers of that era, attempted to kill the child because he was a threat to their authority. And so he had to flee to avoid what would be called the murder of innocence. And so he started off his life not only apparently in a family that couldn't afford so much as a lamb for the cleansing of his mother, but one who ended up as a fugitive and a foreigner. And so understand what that offers up in the way of context for what some call his Sermon on the Plain in chapter 6, where it reads beginning in verse 20, "And he lifted up his eyes on his disciples and said, Blessed are you who are poor, for yours is the kingdom of God. Blessed are you who are hungry now, for you shall be satisfied. Blessed are you who weep now, for you shall laugh. Blessed are you when people hate you, and when they exclude you and revile you and spurn your name as evil on account of the Son of Man. Rejoice in that day and leap for joy, for behold, your reward is great in heaven, for so their fathers did to the prophets." It is so hard for me to understand how it's possible to rejoice in that circumstance. But a song called "In the Middle" by Jimmy Needham might have helped me understand when he wrote about a tragic phone call that his wife got bringing bad news, which prompted him to say, "Look, I can't promise I can pull you out of your misery, but if I can't pull you out, I'm diving in." And so understand, this is a story of a God who said, "Look, I can pull you out, but in order to do it, I'm diving in." And so even when you're afflicted and you can't possibly figure out how to rejoice in these circumstances, please try to find a way to at least ask him to remind you of how much he suffered and how much he can potentially identify with what you are suffering.